Acolyte Episode 5 just dropped, and here's why it's some of the best Star Wars media we've gotten in a while. Bright Suns everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review video for the Acolyte. This is for episode 5 titled Night, which dropped last night. This episode is coming off of the cliffhanger that we got in episode 4 after finally seeing the Master in his full glory, ending the episode with a forced push to knock out all of the Jedi that were there to rescue Kelnaka. Now we are cutting back to what we have been, or at least what I have been anticipating for the whole week, is an all-out lightsaber battle, and boy do we get it in this episode. Now before I get into heavy spoiler territory, I would recommend go pause this video and go watch The Acolyte. I believe this to be some of the best Star Wars media we have gotten in a while, so please do yourself a favor and go watch this episode. So like I mentioned, we open up this episode with Osha on the floor after she got force thrown by the Master. We start to hear remnants of something in the background, but we don't really get a whole lot until Osha wakes up. We then begin to hear lightsabers clashing in the background, and it's very ominous. I mean, when I'm watching these episodes, I'll have my laptop up, just writing notes as I go along. I literally got to one note and had to close the computer because this is the most invested I have been in an episode of The Acolyte since it began. So we see Osha kind of looking around, trying to figure out what's going on, and we see her turn around and get scared by the dead body of one of the Jedi Knights. She then starts to look a little bit more in the distance, and we see just reds, blues, greens, yellows just flashing around in the background. We see the Master taking on an entire squad of Jedi with little to no competition. The Master clearly has exceptional skill with a lightsaber. He is taking on 2 Jedi on one side, taking out other Jedi on the other side, including Yord. The first that we get to see killed on screen is Ithia Pan, who is the Keldor, the same species as Plo Koon, gets stabbed right through the back and just done. So it was really funny that everybody was going crazy about this character on the internet, and she gets killed instantly. So then the interesting part that I had to rewind almost 4 or 5 times was these 2 Jedi going at the Master, and the Master pretty much like holds up his wrist and blocks a lightsaber with it and turns it off, and the other Jedi goes to swing at his helmet. It hits his helmet and his lightsaber turns off. It all was happening very quick, which again, I loved this lightsaber choreography. It is almost rivaling the prequels in terms of speed, in terms of how light the lightsabers really felt. But it was some of the best choreography in lightsabers that I had ever seen, and this just added another element to it that I had personally never seen before. But after the episode ended, I went to do a little bit more research as to what happened. I initially thought that he had cut the lightsaber hilts, but the Jedi end up turning them back on. So I'm trying to think, how did he disable the lightsabers? It turns out that he has a gauntlet and his helmet are both made of the same material called cortosis, which is a material that is used for crafting in the Star Wars universe. So we had seen a lot of this crafting material in the comic books. We also saw it later a little bit mentioned in Lost and Found. We also hear about it in A New Dawn, and we also heard about it in Throne Alliances. So it's been mentioned throughout. This isn't something that just got introduced in The Acolyte. This has been a material that has been a thing for a little while in Star Wars. This material is so strong that it could even repel the impact of a lightsaber and disable it for a couple of minutes. That's exactly what we see here. Upon impact of either his gauntlet or his helmet, lightsabers just turn off. They do come back on in a little bit. As you see, the Master moves on from the other 2 Jedi and goes to try and take out another one, but Yord blocks his saber. And it's this really, really beautiful shot of the red and the yellows mixing, and it's going over like Yord's face, like the illumination. And it was a scene that we saw in the trailer, but to see it with context as to what's going on, it was incredible. So the other 2 Jedi, they ignite their lightsabers, but not before the Master and Yord start fighting fighting each other. The Master is able to cut Yord's leg. The Master starts taking out other 2 Jedi, and we got probably one of the most brutal kills in Star Wars as we see the Master impale a Jedi, use the Force to grab another Jedi, and shish kebab 2 Jedis with 1 lightsaber. And I had to pause it, rewind it. I watched it probably like 4 or 5 times. It was the craziest lightsaber kill I had ever seen. It's at this point we also see Osha get up. She tries to use the stun gun on the Master, not phased at all. He's still standing there, kind of looks at Osha. Yord tells him to run, and she does. And at this point, we cut back to May, who is still in Kelnaka's hut. She tries to run around and find his lightsaber. We then cut to the Master chasing after Osha. The Master chucks his lightsaber at Osha, and his lightsaber could just keep going on forever and ever. It's getting closer and closer to Osha, and Soul comes out of nowhere and blocks it. So it's at this moment we are finally going to get Soul in a lightsaber duel. And before that happens, they're kind of just at a standstill. It's at this point that Yord also comes out. Soul tells Yord, civilian to the ship. He force pushes Osha into Yord's arms, and Yord says, civilian to the ship. So now he is tasked with bringing Osha right back to the Jedi ship as Soul takes care of the Master. Almost the entire way that they're trying to walk to the ship, Osha is insistent that they go back. They need to go back and help, but Yord has a mission. He's sticking to it. He is going to get Osha back to the ship. The Master calls out Soul by name as Master Soul and asks him why he doesn't remember him. Soul brings it up and says that he feels something familiar about this Master, but they just get right into it, and this choreography is incredible. This lightsaber fights, again, they're just going to keep getting better and better as the episode goes on. So we cut back to May, who walks out of Kelnaka's hut and gets drop kicked by Jeki out of literally nowhere. It was like a WWE moment. So they start fighting, and again, the choreography in this is top tier level stuff. They're fighting outside. Jeki force pushes May through the door of Kelnaka's hut, is able to get May onto the ground, and pretty much is, saying you're under arrest for the murder of Master Indara, Master Torben, Master Kelnaka. And just to put a little more salt on the wound, she says you're also under arrest for burning your entire family, which I thought was a little out of character for Jeki, but maybe this is a little bit of her personality. It was harsh. All the power to her. They continue to fight. May starts throwing kunais at Jeki. The fight then continues outside, but not until we cut back to Soul and the Master. They're continuing to duel it out. They take a little break from the fight, and Soul asks what Master hides his face from his pupil, and the Master responds with, "You tell me." So again, we're starting to continue to unravel what's going on with Soul, but before we can even get an answer to that question, we cut right back to Yord and Osha. They start talking a little bit more about what they just saw, what happened, who the heck is this guy, and Yord is a little bit confused, obviously, since he now has fought the Master. He brings up he doesn't follow the rules of combat. He gets into your head and he stays there. After he says that, Osha says that my mother could do that too, that she could get into the mind of the Jedi. So who knows what could be happening with that? Could this Master have been trained by the Jedi? Could he have been trained by the witches? Because a later scene, that line comes back. But before we jump into that, we jump back to Jeki and May fighting each other. They get to a point where May has her around the neck with a knife coming towards Jeki's neck, and she headbutts the absolute crap out of May, just knocking her out almost, and is able to get her in handcuffs. She sees that May took Kelnaka's lightsaber, so she takes it with her, and we're thinking, all right, she's got her. We take a little break from now. Acolyte says, absolutely not. Let's get the Master involved. Jeki and the Master start fighting each other as well. And I mean, Jeki is a Padawan. I think she's already at that level to be a Jedi at this point. Her lightsaber skills are impeccable. Her force strength is on point. Literally, I have it in my notes saying she's holding her own in this fight. She ain't a Padawan no more. And it's at this point now that she hits him in the gauntlet, turns her lightsaber off, and before the master is able to strike her down, and now that her lightsaber is disabled, she uses Kelnaka's to block the master's saber to give her enough time to have her actual saber ignite. So now Jeki is fighting with dual lightsabers against the master, and it is just insane. May is able to get out of her restraints. She's able to do this like contortionist type trick to get out of her position. She's able to get up and start running. The master's like, I'm done playing with you. He cuts Kelnaka's lightsaber, rendering it useless, and starts chasing after May. We cut to Yord and Osha walking through the forest, and it's at this point, it was mentioned earlier on in the episode, but Pip is also a flashlight. He's like this little multi-utility droid, which again, I continue to love. I love Pip, so she's using him as a flashlight through the forest, and she tells Yord that we need to turn our lights off because it attracts them. The them are the bugs that we saw in the previous episode that Soul cut in half, but now it's nighttime when they're most active, and like moths, they're attracted to light, so they turn everything off. We cut back to May, who's continuing to run away, and we see these shots of the master getting inside of May's head, being like, you've betrayed me, I knew you would, and they catch up with each other. She's like, I'm sorry, forgive me, I was weak, and the master says, you've always been weak. He swings his lightsaber and cuts the handcuffs off of May. And as he is about to strike May down, Jeki and Soul come out of literally nowhere, and they both start going at the master. And again, these lightsaber duels just keep getting better and better as the episode goes on, and I am all here for it. It is the buildup we have all been waiting for in the Acolyte, and it is insane. It's at this point where May calls out for Osha, either through the Force or through telepathy, and insists that they come back. And this is where we see for the first time that Yord begins to trust, with a little resistance, begins to trust Osha, insisting that this master is going to kill all of them. We need to go and help them now. Yord agrees, and they start heading back towards where they heard the screams of May and Jeki. We cut back to the fight. They're going off the wall crazy. They start getting to a point where you kind of see Jeki letting her emotions run through as she's swinging this lightsaber at the master. She breaks the master's helmet, and the master is able to unhinge his sabers and turn them into dual lightsabers, which I need that saber today. This is enough of a trick to get to Jeki, and he pretty much triple taps her with this other lightsaber, and Jeki is dead. My favorite character in this show gets absolutely brutalized. Like, you see it from behind her. It's just bop, 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 2 in the chest, 1 I think in the neck, and she's done. You see Jeki fall down, and it is revealed that the master this whole time was Kamir. This has been something that was going around online a lot. It was starting to have a pretty good consensus. I know I put up a poll as to who we thought the master was, and I think Kamir came in second place, first being just someone we haven't met before or haven't met yet, but it turns out it is Kamir. He is kind of just acting like himself, but just with a little bit more, I would say, just darkness in him, because even when May sees him, at this point May didn't even know who the master was. He kind of reverts back to that voice and that character that he played in Revenge and Justice, where he's kind of like, hello, like with this friendlier voice, versus what we had been hearing after the reveal, and pretty much gets May into a chokehold. Soul goes after Kamir while his lightsaber is turned off. Kamir says, oh, well, you tried to attack someone with their back turned. That's not the Jedi way. Soul asks him, who are you? What he says is, I have no name, but the Jedi may call me Sith, which can be open to interpretation of if literally that's what they call him as Sith, or that's what his title is, but again, I feel like that can be left up to interpretation. His end goal is he just wants the freedom to wield his power however he wants, and that he wants a pupil, an acolyte. He says that this one that I tried to train was too weak. While they're talking and the tension is kind of building, like, is he about to kill May? Yord comes out, grabbing the helmet and tries to take a swing at the Master. Yord is obviously surprised that it is Khmer, but before we can even have him literally think up a thought, Khmer is able to get Yord into a headlock and snap his neck, and now Yord is dead. Like, this episode is just cannon fodder at this point. We've already killed Kilnaka, we've killed Jeki, we have now killed Yord. We then see Sol and Khmer get into hand-to-hand combat. This is some of the best choreography we've not only seen in the episode, but what I've seen in Star Wars. But as the fight progresses, we start to see Sol get a little bit angry and a little bit more passionate, and he is able to get Khmer onto the ground. He calls for his lightsaber and ignites it, and it kind of gave me like Anakin vibes, because you just feel all of this anger emitting through Sol as he is ready to literally strike down Khmer, who is unarmed and is just ready to kill him. But Osha stops him and just says no. Khmer is kind of just playing at Osha, saying, well, this is your master. He's about to harm an unarmed person. That's not the Jedi way. And Sol confirms that as well. He steps back, turns off his lightsaber, and Khmer says, rules, rules, rules. If you never follow them, you never have to break them. And it's at this point that I see what was the second saddest departure, is when Osha is holding Pip's head and she says, I love you, Pip. And he turns on this lantern and she's able to stick it onto Khmer and attract all of these bugs that have been following her this whole time, and literally lift Khmer up into the air and just take him away. So she begins to start questioning Sol as to what's going on. Why was he saying those things? Something I forgot to mention. When Sol was ready to cut Khmer's head off, Khmer says, I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? Osha was in that area, and she begins to ask Sol, what did he mean by that? And Sol just says what he's been saying for the entire series, is that let's get back to the ship and I'll explain everything. May used a stun gun on Sol to knock him out. We see May starting to just run through the forest, and Osha pulls out her stun gun and is able to finally hit May, so she didn't miss that time, and get May stunned. After a little bit, we then cut to May and Osha. It's starting to break into dawn. The night is over. They start talking to each other. This is really like the first time that they have now gotten a close encounter. I know we got that in the second episode, but it was very brief. And something I started to, and you could obviously tell me that I'm just going crazy, but I thought that when, you cut to Osha, you obviously have Amandla Stenberg's face, like it's her. But then when you cut to May, I felt like there were just slight altercations digitally to make her look like her younger self, because, when they're both young, they look like they're played by two different people, so I don't know if they were maybe altering that a little bit, because we didn't really see that in episode 2. It just both looked like Amandla. I just thought it was a very interesting choice, seeing as both these characters are played by the same person. May keeps trying to bring Osha back. We start to see that younger side of May that we saw in episode 3, where she's all about the family, she's all about the coven, and that the Jedi took her sister away from her and she just wants to bring her back. Osha obviously is against this. She sees the Jedi as her family, that they were more of a family to her than May ever was. Like, they invited her, they brought her in after her family was killed. May goes in and just hugs Osha and holds her tight, and we start to see that, Osha might be coming into this. She starts to cry, but right after that, she kind of just pins her down again and says that you need to pay for your crimes. May is not about that and force pushes Osha back and knocks her out, essentially. She hits her with, you were never able to block, just something that we saw in episode 3 as well, when Mother Anastasia tried to use the Force on the twins and May had to step in and block for her. But it's also at this point that we see, because I think that Osha had picked up Yord's lightsaber after he died, because then May picks it up and ignites it like right along her hairline and cuts it to the length that Osha has it. We cut to the forest where all the little bugs were, and we see Pip's head, so don't worry. I think Pip is okay. Basil comes out and picks up the Pip droid and walks away. It's also here that we see Kamir, the master, cut up all of these bugs. He's able to get away scot-free and just walks away. We then cut to Sol, who is coming to, and we see Osha. May has taken all of her clothing and had cut her hair and is impersonating Osha with Sol. She's trying to like pretend that she's her. You can kind of get a sense that Sol is confused as to what's going on. I mean, at this point, Sol knows what each of them look like. She's able to pinpoint one and the other, but he nonetheless reaches out for May's hand, gets up, and they start walking back towards the Jedi ship. They're able to get all the way in there, and it's at that point we also see Basil with the Pip head kind of sniffing at it, sniffing up in the air, and you can tell that they have a sense of what is going on. The final shot is we see the master come up and find what he thinks is May, but it's Osha. But again, the master is also able to tell. In episode 2, when we saw Osha pretend to be May, he is able to pinpoint that as well, but he kind of just puts a tarp over Osha, and the episode just ends, and we're just left flabbergasted. We just saw some of the best stunt fighting and lightsaber choreography we had seen in Star Wars in a very long time, with a pretty big reveal. And I know a lot of people like kind of had their instances that it was Kamir, and even me, I was kind of like, oh, it's Kamir. But nonetheless, this master is crazy. The master is obviously in tune with the Force, with lightsaber training. Again, this was by far my favorite episode in The Acolyte. I am hopeful that they keep it going for these last 3 episodes, and I am just excited for what we're going to get next week. Because again, in the trailer, we still see a lot of the Forest, so I don't know if we're leaving Kofar just yet, but I'm really excited. They really have just shot with all guns blazing in this episode, but still left us with enough to continue wanting to watch these last 3 episodes. And I'm just really excited now, because now that we know who the master is, that was one of the big questions in the show. Now we're gonna see what happened on their planet, what is going to happen next, and what is going on with Sol. He has obviously, like, if you've been watching my review videos, I've continued to pour love into Sol. I had buddies saying that they don't trust him, and I'm starting not to trust him either. This is getting to a boiling point, and we're about to find out, because I just loved seeing that little bit of anger in Sol when he was about to just strike down Kamir, and I want to see more of that. Is he kind of leaning towards the dark side? Is he conflicted? We don't really know, but it's something that we're obviously going to be talking about for the next week, and I would love to see comments on it below. But again, if you want more Star Wars content, make sure to like and subscribe for more. But until then, till the spire, my friends.